Welcome back to Think Design Work Smart. I'm Alex Bolboaca and I'm coming at you from the Mozaic Works studios, and what I have for you today is a structure that can help you argue better about software design, but not only about software design. You can argue about code, but I think the same principle applies to other areas of where you can argue about things. So let's look into this. And the main idea here is to separate three things. And to be very, very clear and very, very honest when you are talking about one of these specific things. The first thing is facts, right? Or you could call them observations. Facts or observations are, well, facts are slightly different from observations, but facts are things that you know, that are not disputed, right? That have happened, that you all can agree that they have happened. Observations are kind of similar in the sense that imagine you look at a piece of code and you say, this function is long, okay? This is a fact or an observation. Now, of course, you may ask, how long is long? And that's a bit of a thing that we'll talk a little bit later in the second part. But you can look, I mean, there are some obvious functions that are too long. Some obvious situations when functions are too long. For example, if a function spans two screens, if you need to scroll to see the whole body of the function, this is a long function. And it doesn't have to be, so please note that right now it's not a statement of value. It just says this is a function that is long. It's not too long. Just this is a long function, right? So now this is one fact or observation. The second one would be expert opinion. And an expert opinion is when you interpret the observation through your expertise. For example, you see this function is long, and that's a fact, but then the second step would be it is difficult to understand, or it might lead to bugs because it's long. Now, sometimes you have an explanation for this. In case of a long function, you could say a long function is more difficult to change. It's likely that it has in it smaller things that are duplicated around the code. And if you have a bug in one of those, you'll need to change multiple places because there's hidden duplication. There are parts of the code that are actually, or part of behavior that are either copy-pasted around the code, but they can also be just rewritten in different ways in the code, in various parts of the code. So that would be a possible explanation, but sometimes it's just an intuition. As an expert, you can look at something and say, okay, this doesn't look right. It doesn't feel right. And when an expert says this, it's not about feelings per se, it's more about intuition. And intuition is just experience that you've forgotten, that has somehow gotten so deep into the way you think about things that it's hard to explain. So sometimes it will be difficult to explain certain things. And now this is where you need to be very careful because you need to understand your area of expertise when you argue about these things. and who is your partner of conversation a better or has more expertise in that field, or has less expertise, has roughly the same expertise as you in that field. And here is where we as developers tend to be, not only we, but I'm going to talk about developers mostly, as I do on this channel. And we as developers, we tend to expand our expertise to things where we don't necessarily have it. So it's important to understand that, if you've written code, if you've read code in many different programming languages over a period of many years, if you've improved code, this is an expertise in code structure. But if you've done the same problem again and again and again, maybe not so much. Okay, it's more of an expertise in that specific type of code, which is not the same. So you have to be very careful where your expertise lies and kind of be intellectually honest about your limitations and where you really feel that you're mastering something and the things that are outside that area. And oftentimes what will happen in the team is that you have different expertises and you discuss and you try to merge them in a better context. And this is what this arguing is about, right? If you structure your conversations like this, you can get more out of your combined expertise than if you just argue and say, no, that's stupid, no, that's stupid, and it doesn't help. Okay. There are a lot more things that we could talk about when it comes to expertise and your level and so on, but I won't go into details right now. Let me know in the comments if you want to learn some more. And the third level is preference. Every one of us has specific preferences about code and not only. For example, I prefer code that is minimalist. And by minimalist, I want it to be quite compact. I dislike things that are adding craft to the code. So for example, curly braces on the next row, like it's usually done in C#, or curly braces at all. This is one of the reasons why I like Python so much. But when I can avoid using curly braces, I don't use them. When I can avoid using parentheses, I don't use them, except in very specific cases when I think readability is more important. So, for example, if you have a Boolean expression, I would add more parentheses just to make it very clear which are the terms in that expression. I prefer, specific indentation and so on. So I don't care about tabs versus spaces, by the way. That's a non-issue. So if you ever discuss that, we shouldn't. It doesn't help. But I like my code to be compact. So because of that, for one example is that I prefer to, instead of writing if statements, I prefer to return a conditional statement, like question mark, first term, colon, second term, which is another thing that is done very expressively in Python, by the way, and I like that. So these are three different levels, okay? And the way you can argue about, let's say you're doing a code review or a design review or an architecture review, whatever you are trying to do, or you're trying to find a common solution to something, the first thing you need to do is to establish facts. So in case you're talking about code, which is the easiest, I'm gonna stick with this example. It applies to other areas as well, but it's harder to give examples for those. So if we stick to code, let's say you're doing a code review, you say fact, this function is long, okay? Expert opinion, we should split this function into, or based on this criteria, into more functions, okay? Why? Because part of it is intuition, part of it is something that you can explain, risks and stuff like that. And third, preference, and I would prefer to have functions that are, I don't know, 4 lines long, or I would prefer to eliminate this if statement and replace it with conditional expression, or, you know, or replace this with a lambda or whatever. But these are preferences. And now the thing is, when you talk about facts, it's things that you should all be in agreement in. If you are 2 people, it should be obvious. You should both be very clear that that's correct. You then go into expert opinion. And here you either defer to the opinion of your colleague because you believe that they have more expertise, or that they are, or that they have a point and you want to try that, you know, make an experiment. Or the other way is they defer to your expertise because of the same things, or you agree. It can happen that you already agree. And then you can discuss preferences and say, okay, I would prefer this and this. But now in terms of preferences, it's accepted that the person who executes the task will just do based on their preferences, and they can be influenced by their colleagues' preferences. So this is a way in which you can discuss any issue in software development in a constructive manner. It's a very useful model. I've applied this for a long time, but only recently I have come to understand what I was doing. So now I'm able to explain it to you so that maybe you can also use it in your daily practice. I hope this helps. And if you want me to go into more details about this, please let me know in the comments. We love comments, as you know. So ask questions, you know, give us examples where you have some issues arguing with your colleagues. Let me know in the comments. Let's see if we can have a conversation about software development. Thank you kindly for the view, and until next time, remember to think, design, and work smart. See you next Saturday.